Football is a game of trust. The trust players have in themselves, the trust teammates have in each other, and the trust a manager places in his players. But even more important than all those is the trust that fans have in football. Think of football like an iceberg. You only see the tip, maybe 10 or 15% floating above the water, and the other 90% is hidden below the surface. Whenever a huge iceberg breaks apart, the waves on the surface go crazy. So imagine seeing a red card in a game and thinking, so what? At first glance, that red card might seem minor. But if I told you that a red card in Italy's second division changed football forever, you'd probably think I was crazy. The truth is, almost everything you know about football today, everything football is today, can be traced back to that red card. Or more precisely, to what happened after that red card. We will definitely talk in depth about it, but I want to say that there are already plenty of videos out there about this topic. But I wanted to bring it to you in a way that feels fresh, engaging, and easy to follow, even if you've never heard of it before. So as usual, if it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe now. Let's get going with the story. We've all heard the legends of the 1980s and 90s football. Back then, Italian clubs ruled the world. AC Milan, Inter, Juventus. Those weren't just the top teams in Italy. They were among the biggest clubs on the planet. Serie A was the most watched league in the world, with the highest average attendance in Europe. It isn't the most watched league anymore, and it isn't the richest. The truth is, you can use money to buy great players, to build a great team, to build a great stadium, but you cannot buy back the trust of fans once you break it.
Now, let's talk about that infamous match, Messina versus Venezia. The referee was Luca Paolacci. In Italian football, Paolacci had the reputation of a rising star. He was one of the few referees people thought was clean in Italy's notoriously corrupt football world. But hey, everyone has given red cards at some point. In this game, Paolacci gave all 3 red cards to Venezia players. That might sound like no big deal, until you realize this was a must-win match for Messina. Winning it would practically seal Messina's promotion to Serie A. Suddenly, those red cards were huge. Other club owners in Serie B started screaming match fixing. They accused Messina of rigging the entire promotion campaign with the help of friendly referees. But here's the twist. There were bigger forces at play. Italy, remember, has a dark side. For years, it was famous for 2 things, football and organized crime. And often it felt like the two were connected by an invisible wire. You could sense it, but not grab it. A special team of investigators was already sniffing around this story. What they found was shocking. Messina's wins happened under a trio of referees nicknamed the Roman Gang: Luca Paolacci, Marco Manganelli, and Massimo De Santis. Every single Messina match those guys officiated ended in a Messina victory. We're talking perfect score. And get this, Messina's own board members had a secret connection to those referees. All of them were tied to a company called GeoWorld, which was owned by Luciano Moggi. Luciano Moggi, that name became infamous. He was basically the godfather of power in Italian football. But before we go deeper into Moggi, we have to rewind to understand how we got here. Picture this, it's 1982. The World Cup has just ended and Diego Maradona is on top of the world. Barcelona paid a world record fee to sign him. Everyone thought, wow, European football is about to be reshaped. Maradona was the best player on earth, a genuine genius. Barcelona needed a player like that. But guess what happened? Maradona lasted only 2 seasons in Barcelona and spent most of that time injured. Why? Back then, Spanish football was brutal. Today we think of Spanish teams as all about possession and tiki-taka, but in 1982, La Liga was famous for its physicality and hard tackles. Maradona, the superstar, was in the lineup of every tough team's nightly defensive practice. It was like watching Tony Montana walking into a bar. Everyone wanted a piece of him. After countless rough fouls, Maradona and Barcelona knew it wasn't working. After some fights and controversies, Maradona left Barcelona, and he took 2 things with him above all: his love for partying and his love for cocaine. Yep, Maradona packed up all that baggage and left Barcelona.
Now, he couldn't just go to any club. But in the 1980s Italy, something crazy happened. Maradona went to Napoli. Why Napoli? Think of Italy as a house with north and south. Naples is down south, the poorer, oil-stained side, not as industrialized. People from Naples were often looked down on by northern Italians, treated like outsiders. Their football team, Napoli, felt that too. Napoli was a mid to lower table team always flirting with relegation. Away fans would make banners saying, "Kick these Neapolitans out of Italy, they don't belong here." Napoli and its fans were the outcasts. They needed a savior, and they found one. The world couldn't believe it. The global superstar Maradona was joining this scrappy team? It was the biggest signing in Napoli's history. Napoli fans had never seen anything like it. They had tears of joy in the streets. With Maradona, they thought maybe we can do the impossible. And guess what? They did. In his very first 3 years, Maradona led Napoli to their first ever Serie A title. Then, in the next 3 years, he helped them win another league title, a UEFA Cup, and multiple domestic trophies. Maradona turned Napoli from perennial underdogs into a force in Italy and Europe. He became the god of Naples. Murals of him, people kissing his hand like he was a saint, that kind of worship. But let's be real, Maradona didn't leave his nightlife behind. He was still a night owl, still addicted to drugs. Maradona would spend the night partying and doing cocaine, then show up on the pitch the next morning and carve up defenders. Somehow, he kept passing the drug tests. How? Because Luciano Moggi had his back. Once Napoli won the Scudetto, the club owners brought Moggi in as sporting director. They needed someone who could handle Maradona's off-field antics. Moggi's job: control the media and the federation so Maradona would never be exposed. He made sure cameras never got footage of Maradona's raves. He had so many people in the Italian Football Federation on his side that whenever Maradona had a test coming up, Moggi would tip him off and help Maradona submit a clean sample. There's even a wild rumor that Moggi gave Maradona a prosthetic for his drug tests. So if Maradona's urine failed, he could swap in a clean one. I'm not kidding, that's how much effort was going into protecting the superstar.
Moggi was Maradona's guardian angel, or devil, depending on who you ask. But in 1991, everything fell apart. In the European Cup quarterfinals, Napoli played Spartak Moscow. The first leg in Naples was 0-0. For the second leg in Moscow on November 5th, guess what? The entire Napoli team flew out, except Maradona. Team captain and officials were furious. They go to Maradona's hotel to find out what's happening, and he's in no shape to travel. He's so high on coke he can't even stand up. So the team goes to Moscow without him. Maradona finally woke up the next day, realized what he'd done, and chartered a private jet to get there. He arrived just 1 day before the match. He started on the bench and came on later, but even his magic couldn't change anything. The match went to penalties, and Spartak knocked Napoli out of Europe. Napoli had just lost a huge opportunity and a bunch of money. They were on track to play Real Madrid next, which would have been a massive payday. This was the last straw for Moggi. After this disaster, Moggi and Maradona had a short private meeting in Moscow. It was like a scene out of a mob movie. The result of that meeting was the beginning of the end for Maradona in Naples. Moggi loved Maradona. He'd always had Napoli's back, but he realized Maradona had become too much trouble, even for him. Still, the people in Naples would never let anyone sell their god. If anyone even suggested it, the fans would go berserk. Moggi was powerful, but not that powerful. After a few more months of scandals, first accusations about an illegitimate child, then the media got hold of photos proving Maradona's cocaine habit, it all blew up. A secret police raid caught Maradona with connections to the Camorra, Naples mafia. Then, just before the season ended, a surprise drug test was performed that Moggi couldn't cover up. Maradona tested positive for cocaine and was banned for 15 matches. One thing led to another, and soon Maradona was out of Italy. And that, friends, was just the beginning of what Luciano Moggi was capable of.
Now you're probably wondering, who is this Luciano Moggi guy really? He wasn't a superstar player or a famous coach. He started young as a scout. He had an uncanny eye for talent. He could spot future legends. Even more, Moggi had a knack for getting close to players on a personal level. He wasn't just scouting talent, he was recruiting loyalty. He actually became something of a mentor or father figure to many players. Because of that, people nicknamed him the second father to the players he controlled. Clubs didn't just hire Moggi to find players. They hired him to manage players. He was a relationship guy, good with people, not so great with paperwork. All these skills led him to one big realization. Power in football is not played out on the field or on stage for the cameras. It lives in the shadows. There's a famous description of Moggi. He's not corrupt. He is the concept of corruption. Charming, right? Moggi went from being a scout to sporting director and even club president. He hopped around. Lazio, Torino, Napoli, Roma. At Roma, before a crucial match, he was spotted having dinner with the referee who was about to officiate that game. Roma won, but the club bosses were furious. They saw the writing on the wall and sacked Moggi immediately. That sent Moggi to Juventus.
At Juventus, Moggi's power peaked. Signing him was a huge deal. Remember, Juve hadn't won a league title in 8 years. Moggi instantly delivered success. 5 league titles in 6 years. But how did he do it? It was no accident. He had a plan built on 3 pillars of control. Pillar 1. Referees. Moggi realized that in Italy at that time, getting referees on your side was pretty easy, and it didn't always require a fat envelope. It was favors, career moves, and the threat of media exposure. He'd line up an official and say, "Tell you what, help me out with that next match, and I'll make sure you get the big game you've been angling for next month. Or I'll pull some strings to get your kid into a youth academy." Give and take. Once a referee was in Moggi's pocket, Juventus got the benefit. Needlessly rough challenges by Juve players were overlooked. On the flip side, if a player from another club was tearing up the league, the ref might find any excuse to suspend him for a game, so he'd miss the next big match. Free kicks and penalties would go the other way on the slightest contact. Opponents would get booked or sent off for minutia. It became, let's say, the Italian way. You might ask, but what about the fans? They see all this live in the stands. And that brings us to Pillar 2, the media. Moggi had the TV networks and newspapers in his pocket too. If a controversial moment happened in a Juventus match, the broadcasts would simply not show it. Think about it. 40,000 people in the stadium see it, but at home, you see nothing. Worse, the media would help intimidate any referee who resisted Moggi's deals. A ref who tried to stay honest? The cameras would catch his mistakes next week, replaying each one over and over, making him look incompetent. The message was clear: if you cross Moggi, your failures will be on loop for all of Italy to see. It was a hushed network of fear. And it worked both ways. Any journalist who wanted access to Juventus players or any club news knew they had to get Moggi's permission first. This network wasn't just inside football, it spread out to sponsors, banks, and even local government. Anyone who stood up to Moggi could have their livelihood cut off. It was like one of those spy thrillers where one man is watching everything, pulling strings from behind closed doors. Now, even if Moggi controlled referees and the media, remember, the games are played by players. Moggi needed control on the pitch, too. That brings us to Pillar 3, Gia World. Gia World was a players' agency, owned by Moggi's son. It became ridiculously powerful. At one point, a full 1 in 4 players in Italy's top flight was represented by Gia World, 25% of Serie A. Imagine a team whose starting lineup is mostly signed through one agency. That team would have to keep that agency happy, or else their best players might suddenly want to leave. Moggi's influence over the transfer market was total. If you wanted any big transfer scoop or even just to access players, you had to go through Moggi. You could say he had the infinity gauntlet of Italian football. One snap, and he controlled a quarter of the league. Okay, let's snap back to reality now. The Messina-Venezia match and the wiretaps. Hours before that game, investigators who had been chasing the crime football conspiracy got a goldmine, a wiretap from Italy's largest telecom company, Telecom Italia. They recorded a call in which a betting boss is told Messina is going to win this match because Il Nero has given permission. Il Nero, literally the black man, was code for someone high up. The conversation went on to mention all sorts of matches, using code names like the Handsome One, the Saint, and the Great Boss. It was straight out of Sopranos. These were mafia-style code names. This was the first time anyone had proof. Matches were being decided off the field, in smoky rooms. Over the next days, the investigators collected over 200,000 wiretapped calls. Referees, players, club bosses, even people in the Italian FA. Everyone was on the tape. They even got Adriano Galliani, AC Milan's GM and a power in Italy's Olympic Committee, taking part in the schemes. FIGC Vice President Innocenzo Menga was on the line talking with Moggi and his allies. And, wait for it, the FIFA boss figure was Franco Carraro, ex-AC Milan president and at that time, FIGC head. Carraro had been caught years earlier giving European passports to loads of South American players. You know, the old passport scandal. Funny thing is, when Carraro's inquiry came around, who was the one club he let off the hook? Inter Milan. No coincidence. Anyway, the tapes showed GEA World shaking down players too. backed by hints of mafia muscle. A kid gets the message. Sign with our agency, or else. It was ugly stuff. The investigators had everything on tape, could bust anyone they wanted. But the problem was the big club owners also owned newspapers and TV stations. So for a while, nothing got printed. It was like a government secret. Until La Gazzetta dello Sport finally went public. Then the floodgates opened. Day by day, paper by paper, the story went nationwide. Fans everywhere were outraged. Everyone who was accused resigned in shame. The Italian Football Federation was in tatters. Agents were exposed as mobsters. The system that controlled everything was outed. A lot of names were too big to repeat. They were just too powerful. The people of Italy were livid, and justice had to be served, even if it was only a slap on the wrist. So, what happened next? The Italian Olympic Committee set up a commission to dole out punishment. Clubs were hit hard. Juventus was sent down, and later on appeal, they ended up with point deductions and lost titles instead of actual relegation. Fiorentina and Lazio were initially relegated, though they later got a break and stayed up. Juventus had 2 league titles stripped from them, 2004-5 and 2005-6. One of those titles was then handed to Inter. AC Milan got an 8-point deduction and had to start the next season in an empty stadium for a match. By the end, Juventus was the big loser. They had to play 1 year in Serie B and lost 2 trophies on paper, while most others eventually cut deals. They kind of felt like, we already have a 14-team Serie A now. Why kill Italian football? In the aftermath, all the accused clubs and officials were practically pariahs. Fans refused to watch. The trust was gone. But one club quietly smiled. Inter Milan. Inter ended up getting those 2 titles after Juve had them stripped. They went on to have arguably the greatest decade in their history. 5 straight league titles, 2010, 2014, and a Champions League. This, my friends, is what I meant by power in the shadows.
The puppet masters had set it up so they could reap the rewards. The head of the disciplinary commission, Guido Rossi, was a Harvard-educated lawyer who'd been president of Telecom Italia, the source of all those wiretaps, and a board member at Inter. He was the one who said, one of Juventus's strip titles should be given to Inter. A lot of coincidences, huh? Telecom Italia's president was one of Inter's biggest shareholders. The first paper to break the story was owned by Urbano Cairo, vice president of Inter's board. The Inter owner, Massimo Moratti, had connections to all this. And the only team that didn't get punished for all those bogus passports Carraro handed out? Inter Milan. So yeah, it all seems to point Inter's way. In the end, this was one of the biggest scandals ever. Italian football has never really recovered from it. Everyone from Juventus to Milan to others still tries to play innocent, but the whole system was rotten. It makes you think, when we watch a match today, how much of what we see is real? This isn't just some old scandal in the textbooks. It's part of the reality that football fans stayed away from. Okay, I know that was a lot, but if you've made it this far, hey, thanks for watching this all the way through. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate all who have joined with us over the last few weeks. So I'll see you next time with more crazy stories. Peace out and stay safe.